So we're getting ready for a big boxing weekend, and Kevin Iole is off the MMA beat for this weekend. He's in Atlantic City covering Kelly Pavlik and Sergio Martinez, and it's a fight that deserves coverage, and it's a guy that deserves coverage because I wrote earlier today that Pavlik is he's kind of disappeared after at 26 years old. I mean, the guy was as big a star as the U.S. had in boxing.
Yeah, that's really true, Steve. I mean, he beat Jermaine Taylor twice, in dramatic fashion to win the middleweight title. Then a lot of people forget it was a non-title fight in the rematch. They fought over the weight. Wins that fight, and he was a huge star. But, since those two fights, the second of which was in early 2008, then he comes back. He fights Gary Lockett, a total non-entity. Loses to Bernard Hopkins on a fight where he was sick and wasn't really ready to go. And then in 2009, kind of a lost year for him. He fights his mandatory. You can't blame him for a mandatory. But he fights Marco Antonio Rubio in a fight that's hardly inspiring at all. Gets staph infection, nearly dies, and ends up in the second fight fighting Miguel Espino, another total non-entity. So, he really is in need of a win. And right now, he's got a tough fight ahead of him tomorrow night.
And I made the argument that I think boxing needs Kelly Pavlik. I mean, he's a big-name fighter. He has a big fan following with the Youngstown crew. And there's a lot of fights on the horizon, whether it's a guy like Paul Williams sort of coming up or some of the guys at 168 in the mix.
Well, I think that, Kelly Pavlik is good for boxing from the standpoint that he is a knockout puncher. Mm-hmm. And people, you always hear all the time, does boxing need heavyweights? Boxing needs knockouts. That's what people like. And, heavyweights tend to deliver a lot of knockouts. But, Kelly Pavlik is a knockout puncher. And if you get a guy like that and you get him on a roll and he's winning some big high-profile fights, it's good for the sport. So, no doubt if Kelly Pavlik goes out there tomorrow and beats Martinez, then, I think that's a terrific thing for the sport. But, by the same token, Sergio Martinez, really a good fighter, one loss in the last 10 years, a good-looking guy. I mean, I wrote in my column, I said, this guy could be in the Chippendales or something. I mean, he's got a lot going for him other than just his boxing skill. But if he wins this fight because he's such a good fighter, then I think he potentially could get into the mix and be one of the more popular guys out there.
Is there a chance that Pavlik, confidence-wise and health-wise, isn't all the way back?
I think he is back. Now it's a tough matchup for him because Martinez is a left-hander, the way he fights. Martinez is extremely fast. I think he's going to have a big speed advantage. Pavlik's advantage in the fight, Steve, is that he's, the bigger, stronger guy. I mean, he's much bigger. He may come in tomorrow night at 175, and I don't think you'll see Martinez any more than about 163, 164 on the night of the fight. So, it's going to be interesting, but I think Kelly, this is a good position for Kelly to be in because everything's in front of him. Win this fight, and you've got a lot of good things ahead.
Now, Pavlik's trying to rebuild that reputation as the dominant middleweight fighter in the world. He can do that in the future with a win here, maybe Williams, maybe some of the 168 guys at catchweights or down at middleweight. Now, did Jack Lowe go as far as saying what? He could be the best middleweight recently or ever?
Well, he didn't say he's the best ever right now. He said that he has that kind of potential to become the best ever. I think a little bit on the exaggerated side right there. The guy that he lost to would be ahead of him in that race. But you'd think of middleweight, and it's one of the great divisions in the history of boxing. And Sugar Ray Robinson, who I think is the best pound for pound fighter of all time, at the end of the 20th century was voted both the best welterweight champion ever and the both middleweight champion ever. I think he belongs to fit up there. Kelly Pavlik is not in a league with Sugar Ray Robinson, nor will he ever be. But that's not really damning him because who is? But he's a great. I shouldn't even say great. He hasn't proven he's great. He's a good fighter. He's got a lot going for him. He's 6'3", just under 6'3". He's about 6'2 3/4. Got a big long reach, and he can punch like heck. So that's a guy that that could be a factor. The problem I think that keeps him from getting there, Steve, is that he doesn't have the opposition. Look, who are you mentioned several times. You said, well, he maybe has Paul Williams or some of the 168 guys, and that's exactly it. Nobody at middleweight other than Williams, if he beats Martinez, that really makes a lot of sense.
I think the deal now is that everything's kind of changed with specific weight classes, hasn't it? Isn't boxing a lot different than I think in past years where you're going to see guys maybe have short stints at certain weights because they want to go get the big money fights?
Well, that's true, and I commend guys for doing that. I mean, I think you should chase the big fights as opposed to saying, "Hey, I want to sit in one division." And
Right.
I don't think you're going to see a lot of guys do what Bernard Hopkins did or what Joe Calzaghe did, keep one title for a long time and rack up 15, 20 defenses. If there's the competition there, great, go ahead and do that. But you make a good point, and I think it's accurate. You want to go out there and meet the best guys, make the most money, and be in the most compelling fights. The problem with doing that, though, is how do you get yourself in the mix? If you happen to be good enough, how do you get yourself in the mix for people to say, hey, Kelly Pavlik is one of the best middleweights ever, when you don't fight at middleweight all that often? I mean, you think about it now, since he's won the title, his title-winning fight was at middleweight. His first defense was not. Then Gary Lockett fight was in fact at middleweight. The Bernard Hopkins fight was not. It was only until last year that he had back-to-back middleweight fights. So and neither one of those were memorable opponents. So that's the risk that he takes by moving around, that he won't get that kind of recognition. But I would rather see him move around and get in the good fights and get recognition as, hey, one of the best fighters of his time and a guy that was willing to fight anybody.
Now, is the crowd in attendance going to be treated anything else? We talk about the health of boxing versus, say, MMA, and where MMA has had some advantages. Maybe they fixed some things. Does the undercard have anything worth watching?
Not down here. There's one good fight. Mike Jones is a Philadelphia-based welterweight. He's a pretty good prospect, and he's in a difficult fight against Hector Munoz. I think that could be a pretty good fight. But the undercard overall here in Atlantic City, not that great, so not expecting a lot from that. HBO's doubleheader, though, they have Lucien Boutte fighting against Edison Miranda. And, I think Miranda's kind of like that trial horse. All the top contenders beat him. So, Lucien Boutte fancies himself as the best 168 in the world. If he's going to be that, this is a fight that he has to win. And, Miranda, I don't think is a terrific fighter by any stretch of the imagination. But the one thing about him, Steve, is that he's entertaining. He comes to fight. He just winds up and throws. He throws these like big fastballs all the time. And, he makes it fun. And so, I think it should be a fun little doubleheader tomorrow on HBO.
All right, tomorrow night you have all the coverage, the stories, you're going to do round-by-round updates. What do we have coming on Yahoo?
I'm going to do round by round coming. I'll have my score going out there after each round, so you can check that at Yahoo Sports. And, of course, I'll have a full column after the fight, and really looking forward to it. I think people should tune in. It'll be a good one, and they'll have a lot of fun. If you like boxing, you like high-level boxing, this is going to be a good show for you.